All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started here. Risky wanted to open the class with some questions, so I'll read it for you guys. All right, question number one. To what extent can we discuss our personal story, background, motivation in the statement of purpose? I know the difference between statement of purpose and personal statement. To be honest, I'm not even sure that anyone really knows that difference. But some people say to skip the personal story and just focus on research. Other people say don't skip personal story because it's the hook that grabs the attention of admission officers or faculty members when they read our statement of purpose. Or can we only discuss personal story that is relevant for our research? So, my answer is going to probably be not that satisfying to you, but, and I'll get into this, I think the most important thing you do is you follow the directions that you are given in the statement of purpose directions. Every school asks for different things. Some schools want you to emphasize, heavily your research component. Some schools want you to really talk about what motivates you. So as long as you're ticking every box, like tick, 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 you can kind of explore other areas of your statement of purpose, assuming you still have room left over. So, for example, let's say they give you 1,500 words and they ask you to do four things. As long as you do those four things in, like, let's say 1,200 words, you can then use those extra 300 words to tell a personal story, to have an interesting hook, something like that. I think far more important is actually following the directions and doing precisely what they ask you to do. And, as a teacher, um, I can't tell you how kind of annoying it is when a teacher will ask a question and they'll say something to the effect of, like, what piece of evidence from the passage, like, allowed you to conclude this answer? And then the first thing out of the student's mouth is not a piece of evidence. It's not, the person's not answering the question that they're asked. And I think that applies to the statement of purpose as well. Make sure you answer the question that's being asked. And like I said, it's typically a multi part question, which means you have to, like, hit the check boxes, tick, 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 tick. And then if you still have room left over, you can kind of experiment more. All right, let's see what else we got. All right, number two, risky. Do you think it's okay to discuss the theoretical debates in the issue area I'm interested in to give the context to the admissions officer or a faculty member what research question I'd like to do in my master's program if admitted? I think that's fine. She's basically saying, should we talk about these theoretical debates in her field? But only if that's truly what motivates you. If you're doing it just because you're trying to show some artificial knowledge of the field, I think a professor reading your statement of purpose will be able to sniff that out. So if you're actually interested in these theoretical debates, I mean, truly interested, and you're not doing it just to, like I say, kind of give this false impression, then yes, I think that would be an interesting thing to talk about. Then she says, I'm just afraid that the statement of purpose should be made in a language where everybody understands, while dropping theoretical jargon or being technical might not enable everyone outside my field. No, I'm not saying I don't necessarily agree with that. If you are motivated by something quite technical in the field, then I think it's okay to talk about. But again, you actually have to be motivated by that. I think a lot of people, their first tendency with a statement of purpose is to bullshit, just write a bunch of stuff. And at least for me, that seems obvious, or it seems evident. And I'll kind of give you guys an example from my perspective. You guys know what I care about. You know that I care that education is affordable. You know that I care about education is accessible. You know that I care about different cultures, that I'm trying to embrace kind of a global platform here. And, when I say those things, you can kind of notice I'm not just saying those things. I'm actually kind of interested in those things. And whenever you're truly interested in it, your passion will kind of seep through. All right, her next question is, I recently talked to current grad students in the university I'm applying to, and he said And the statement of purpose, we should have an interesting RQ. I don't know what RQ means. What's an RQ? RQ. Risky, what's an RQ? Research question. Okay. My question is, what defines interesting research question? I mean, are the directions asking you to talk about a research question? I mean, if those are what the directions are specifically asking you to do, then an interesting research question would be one that is interesting to you. But more importantly, it has to be something that can be tested. So, for example, you can't have a research question about something like, what is dark matter? Because nobody knows. That would be a bad research question. So, if you actually do have a research question, it should be something that's testable. It should be relatively specific, and it should be something that will advance the field. You don't want to be doing research questions that were solved 200 years ago, for example. So I think you might know better about this because you are also crazy about academics. He. Am I crazy about academics? Not sure. Okay. How much value do statement of purpose and letter of recommendations stand when compared to GRE? I think typically what I hear is it's into thirds, one third, one third, one third. So one third GPA, one third standardized test scores, and then one third everything else. So if you actually include everything else, like the letters of recommendation, statement of purpose, it's probably carrying about equal weight as long as you include all those things. Number 4, how many professors' name and work should we mention on the statement of purpose? Typically, I don't, at least the statement of purposes I see, I don't really see professors' name and work dropped that often. So if you're just doing it in kind of like this artificial manner, then I probably wouldn't do it at all. All right, next question, should I address my low GPA in the statement of purpose? That's from Rahul. It depends on what you mean by low, and it depends on how you preface it. So if the statement of purpose, if the low GPA is something that actually kind of motivated you to get your act together, to pursue a master's program, to pursue a PhD, then yeah, you might weave it in there. I would be a little bit careful with that though, because remember, the whole point of a statement of purpose is to actually talk about what you're trying to do. So I'm not sure what role the low GPA will kind of say in that regard. You would have to be very careful with it. Yeah. So a lot of people are saying no. If you do that, you would have to be very, very careful. Okay. Next one. How to prove that XYZ University is the best fit. I am drawing blanks. Again, see, I think people have the tendency here to bullshit. So, like a lot of these research questions will say, why do you choose this university? And I think for a lot of people, the real reason is, well, I don't know. It sounds like good. It's like top 10 ranking. And that's really all they know. I would strongly encourage you guys to really, really kind of look inward and find out exactly what it is you want. Because I think you guys know what I want. And I think I'm a very good example. When you actually find what you want, you start to pursue dreams, you start to affect lives, you start to help people. But if it's all just kind of a ruse that you're putting on just so you can like tell people you're going to a top 10 institution, at least in my opinion, I think that kind of artificiality is going to come through the paper. So you actually have to kind of get a genuine passion. And a lot of that genuine passion might be related to the school you're applying to. You certainly can't just say, like, oh, it has a top ranking, blah, blah, blah. It has to be a little bit more specific than that. This might be a good place where you could mention a researcher's name. You could say, blah, blah, blah research is on the cutting edge of this field. And in his paper, blah, 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 blah. But you actually have to read the paper and you actually have to be inspired by the paper. I remember 5 years ago or something when I was doing my master's, I read this paper from this guy. He was from Denmark or something like that. And he was doing a paper on what's known as a corpus study. And a corpus study is basically when you take a large kind of body of a language, I'm talking like millions of words, maybe even hundreds of millions of words, and you basically analyze that corpus for trends and for patterns and things like that. And I remember reading that and just getting really inspired because it seemed to combine my interest with language also with my interest in statistics. And, that kind of thing really directed me down a path, and it wasn't a fake thing. It wasn't kind of an artificiality kind of thing. So ARPIT, you would actually have to do real research about what attracts you to various universities. I mean, it would have to be something concrete, basically. And I would really discourage you from kind of, I'm going to use the word bullshitting a lot here. I would discourage you from bullshitting too much. And I would really look inward and, really study the university and find out what it is that really attracts you. Okay, what else we got? Agree, Greg. So this is from Thumb. She said, I agree. My professor says if I can't think about how to design an empirical study for a research question. Yeah, so the research question has to be something that's testable. So it actually has to be something that, you can write a journal article about. A lot of academia revolves around this idea of getting published. And I know that it has kind of a bad name, but the logic behind it is you're trying to advance a field. You're trying to make a contribution to a field. And if you have a research question that's basically untestable, then it becomes very difficult to make any kind of contribution to that field, right? Okay, what else? Equal John, it should be SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, reasonable, timed. Yeah, so Equal John is elaborating a little bit on what's a good research question. And I think I mentioned a couple of these. I mentioned specific and measurable. Okay, Risky, let's see. Rahul, I'm running a blog related to the field I'm applying to. Should I mention about it in the SOP? I would, because to me, that indicates real motivation. Especially, like, for example, if you started the blog last week, that's going to reek of bullshit, my favorite word. But if you started the blog 2 years ago, I think that's a very sound kind of valuable addition, in my opinion. All right, should we justify the reason of low GPA in the statement of purpose? I mean, again, the whole point of a statement of purpose is to talk about what you want to achieve and what motivates you. Mentioning the low GPA, I'm not sure is a good indication of what motivates you. It would have to be done very, very carefully. So I don't think I would put the low GPA in my statement of purpose from a personal perspective. Next question, does GPA still stand if you have 2+ work experience and your work towards society? Yeah, I mean, I would say the GPA always plays some kind of role, but basically this is about balancing. So if your GPA is low, but you have a lot of other amazing stuff going on in your life, then that can kind of counter a low GPA. Next question, Thumb. I agree with that too, Greg. The potential advisors mean so much more. Corpus. Yes, corpus, so hard to understand. NLP, I'm not sure what that means. Okay. Let's see. Equal John, the university has prerequisites we should have covered before the grad school, but if we didn't have them from undergrad university, should we kind of tell that we have this prerequisite from self-learning? No, to me, that just seems, that kind of seems like bullshit. If you're going to say, oh, I achieved this prerequisite, learning by myself on Coursera or Khan Academy, first of all, there's no proof. You can just write whatever you want. If you're really motivated by this field, what's to actually stop you from enrolling in community college courses or something like that? So I would, if you actually enroll in real courses that can kind of have a transcript record, I think that's a good idea, but I wouldn't mention any online courses, especially if there's no kind of proof. Like, for example, don't put, student of GregMat Plus. That probably would work against you. So should we also discuss our research design? Again, if the question is asking you to discuss your research design, then yes. If the question is not asking you to discuss your research design, I probably wouldn't. Can I include a patent in my statement of purpose, which is still pending? Sure, as long as it kind of indicates the kind of broad direction you want your career to go in. All right, next one, Natalie. The program I'm applying to does not have any specific questions that need to be answered. So how would I approach the statement of purpose? So good question. In this case, Natalie, I think you would approach it in the sense of what motivates you. So what, I would do it this way. Why do you want to, be involved in this field? What actually motivates you to join this field? How can you contribute to this field? What do you want to do differently? What would you like to study? What would you like to advance? Things like that. And then what have you done so far in order to achieve that goal? Are you volunteering? Have you written a research paper? Have you contacted professors? So if you're not given any specific directions, those would be the two areas that I would tackle. Let me summarize. Number one is, what exactly motivates you to join this field? Okay. Number two, how are you going to contribute or advance this field? And then finally, number three, what have you done to actually achieve that already? I know you want to go into a master's program or a PhD program, but what have you done like so far that has kind of led you to this goal? And if the answer is nothing, well, that's not going to look very good. You still have to write a statement of purpose, no choice. And I strongly discourage anybody from lying. Okay, so I wouldn't do that. And if you haven't done anything to achieve, your goal right now, what's stopping you? So I remember, like a year or 2 years ago, I'm sitting around, I'm, teaching people, about a test, and I kind of fundamentally disagree with the process. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm charging people $100 an hour. They don't always improve. I don't feel very great about that. Are they actually getting $100 of value here? And then so one summer, I just hosted a free class. And I said, all right, if you guys don't improve, no problem. Hopefully you get something out of this and you're not going to lose any money. And then that led me to the YouTube channel. And then finally that led me to what we're involved in right now, Greg Matt Plus. So I have this record, this track record. I mean, you can imagine if I'm writing the statement of purpose, the actual evidence that I can supply is quite substantial. So that's kind of what I'm saying here. The more you can put in there to actually show you're working toward the achievement of these goals, the better. All right, next one. How can I address the experience I would contribute to the class? Uh, Number one, you guys are international students. I'm imagining most of you are. So number one, you guys contribute already kind of a diverse perspective. But I think you also want to be a little bit more concrete than that. Like, what do you personally bring to the table? Right. So for me, for example, maybe I'll mention experience in the field, or maybe I'll mention kind of my unique vision about how test prep can be both, high quality and accessible. So I would, in general, especially if I were an international student, I would probably mention something about bringing in a little bit of diversity. We're now in a very globalized world. People need to interact with people from other cultures. And then a more specific sense, I would, really kind of mention something about your background or something that you really do kind of contribute in terms of value to other people. Next, can I say I was not interested in theoretical aspects of engineering and was more into practical aspects? Well, first of all, isn't engineering by definition kind of practical? So I'm not sure if that's going to be that great of a statement. I mean, the definition of engineering is, in my opinion, could be wrong, is literally the application of theory. For example, an airplane is engineering, and then what is it? Astrophysics or aerodynamics is theory. So I'm not sure I would actually mention that, because to me it just seems kind of obvious. Oh my God, so many questions. I don't know if Greg can answer them all. Should we mention about journals we are interested about in? No, that seems like wasting space. Yeah, like, how would you actually even mention that? I'm interested in this journal. That probably wouldn't come across as that good. If my article doesn't match with the professor, should I mention it in my SOP? Yeah, I mean, if you're actually published, I would definitely mention it, even if your published article doesn't touch the field you're talking about, because just the fact that you published is a kind of very strong indication that you know how to do research, you know how to write, even if it's not related to that field. Next question. If one has not have good research experience, then how can we write the SOP? If you don't have any good research experience, you can write about your other experience, work experience, and you can also write about what motivates you. So that's what I would do. All right. Do you think while writing your SOP that it's important to find a balance between sounding professional but also not too robotic? Yes, I do think so. Yes. And I think if you're actually writing about something you're passionate about, I think that happens naturally. I think if you, it's like the words flow. Like if you ask me right now to talk about the test prep industry, the words are just going to flow because it's something I'm passionate about. If you find something that you're passionate about, the words should just flow. It should just boom, 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 boom. And in that case, I think you're going to sound professional and at the same time not sound like a robot. Next question. They only ask the applicants to discuss research questions, so focus on that only. Yeah, I mean, if that's what they're asking you. Oh, Greg, in political science, is it recommended to contact professors before we apply? I heard it's not recommended. Is it true? For this, I'm not sure. So risky. I don't want to give you a bad, kind of a bad answer there. I'm not exactly sure about that one. Norma gave me a heart. Thank you, Norma. I meant theoretical means appearing for exam and writing the study the day before the exam. Again, Rahul, I'm still not exactly sure about your point there. If anyone has teaching experience, should we mention? Yeah, I think so, especially if the teaching experience has motivated you in some way. But just from the fact that in a lot of PhD programs, they're going to ask you to teach, yeah, I would definitely mention that somewhere. Could you please talk about structure and flow of the SP? The structure is going to depend on the questions that you are asked. So some statements of purpose have like 4 or 5 questions. That almost dictates your structure right there. It's like one paragraph has to be about the first part, one paragraph has to be about the second part, one paragraph has to be about the next part. But if the actual question is not really giving you a structure, I almost think you have a little bit of freedom. It's almost like you can explore, show a little bit of your personality. Like I think her name was Natalie. Like Natalie said, or was it Natalie or Nikki? Nikki, yeah. Nikki said, you don't want to sound too robotic. So in that case, don't be afraid to take a risk as long as you're writing about something you're passionate about. Don't take a risk because you read somewhere that taking a risk is good. All right, next one. What should I mention in my SOP if I'm not planning to pursue a research degree? In that case, I would talk about how you could contribute to the field in other ways and what has attracted you to the field. Maybe you want to help people. Maybe you want to, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't always have to be about research, especially if you're applying to a master's. How do I best talk about publication if I'm not the first author? Mention it. I mean, journal articles are written all the time by, 10 people, 5 people. Just mention it. It's definitely something to mention. In what level technical jargons are allowed in an SOP? I'm asking this as I have kind of a lot of experience in the field I'm applying to with 6 research publications. I am in a paradox of writing too much technical jargon and writing plain content and technical. So certainly, Osina, you don't want to just kind of like summarize your research. That's not that good. You want to weave your research into what motivates you and how you, the things you want to kind of further study. So I certainly wouldn't be too technical because remember, don't lose sight of the big picture. The big picture of a statement of purpose is kind of what motivates you and what you can contribute to the field. If you start like kind of summarizing research articles, that's going to come across as a little bit like missing the boat or missing the topic. Hold on, let me take a drink of green tea. Whew. All right. I love jasmine green tea. Should we write SOP specifically for each university? 100%. 100% yes. Yeah, if you're using some generic stock statement of purpose, that's going to be bad. All right. You can maybe reuse a paragraph here and there, but you certainly don't want to reuse the whole thing. Should I write about my research, which was never published? Yeah, I would. I would, Jyoti. Yeah, I would. But don't say like it was never published because it was terrible. Don't say that. Next one. Hi, Greg. This might be a little off topic, but I'm applying to law school and taking the GRE. And I was wondering, do you think I should share my personal statement to my professors who are writing letters of rec to understand? Give them the option, Connie. Give them the option. Say, so whenever you talk to your professor, say, I can share my personal statement if it would help you write it. Okay, give them the option. I am a co-author of a published journal in English, and I am also a co-author of a book, but published only in Korean. Shall I mention? Yeah, definitely, 100%. Anytime you're published, even if it's only in Korean, I would definitely mention it. Would you recommend doing the optional essays? Yes, the optional essays are not optional. Do them. And if GRE is low, GPA is pretty fine. Should we mention that GRE? No, don't mention the GRE. Again, the statement of purpose is to talk about what motivates you. How does a low GRE score motivate you? So it's almost like you're bringing attention to a part of your application you shouldn't really bring attention to. I meant specific research papers published in journals. This paper motivated me, something like that. Yes, Radosha, you should mention that if it's actually true. Okay, don't find some random research article and then say this motivated me, because that's going to come across as false. If you're legitimately motivated by something that you read in a research article, then yes, I could mention it. What should I write if they ask me to talk about my strengths and weaknesses? I would be honest. One of my weaknesses is organization. You guys probably know this. I'm not that organized. I'm really not. Another one of my weaknesses is I tend to start things and sometimes not finish them, but I'm working on it. You know, I'm trying to get more disciplined. So don't be like the person who tries to turn their weaknesses into strengths. I don't really agree with that, because again, it comes across as false. But what you should do is say, hey, this is my weakness, but I'm working to improve it in these following ways, A, B, and C. All right. This is one of my weaknesses, but I'm working to improve it in A, B, and C, something like that. Zial, I have no research experience. What will I focus on? Focus on everything else. Focus on what motivates you. Focus on other things that you have done to contribute to the field in some way. It doesn't always have to be research. Like, let me give you an example. Imagine I'm a nurse, you know, applying to a PhD in nursing program, which does exist, by the way. Even if I've never done nursing research, I mean, just working in a hospital, maybe attending a conference or two. So, you know, you can start getting your quote unquote research experience right now by just going to a conference. Now, if you're in a developing country, especially, that's going to be quite difficult. So you basically just have to do what you can to start kind of exposing yourself to this research world, even if that just means reading journal articles. All right, moving on. How to connect different aspects, education, work, future research interests of the SOP. So, Arpit, one way you can do that is just with paragraphs. Yeah, you can just do it with paragraphs. Not even links. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you. I'm working on my honors thesis, but it won't be finished until next year. Should I mention about my study plan? Yeah, you could mention your study plan. I probably wouldn't mention that you're working on an unfinished honors thesis. I probably wouldn't say that unless it's something really substantial. What are optional essays? Optional essays are typically these like 1 paragraph to 2 paragraph questions that they ask you. But in my opinion, they're not really optional. The program which I studied was outdated and very basic and had no application in industries. When I was exposed to these industrial level projects, it was very interesting and was submerged in it and couldn't concentrate on the grades. Is it a red flag? I mean, if that's actually a true statement, if you were so distracted by the practicalities that you forgot to do your homework, that's a hard sell to me. That's a hard sell. Rahul, you're going to have to be very careful with the way you phrase that. Anytime you have a low GPA, that's going to be somewhat of a red flag. But I remember even one semester in university, I had a bad semester. And that was when I made the switch from chemical engineering to political science. And then when I switched to political science, I had straight A's. So I had kind of this upward trend that I could mention. So I could mention the GPA thing because I had this upward trend kind of thing. And I think I was honest in my statement of purpose. I think I said something to the effect of, you know, I chose chemical engineering for the wrong reasons. It was a bad decision. It was a mistake. But eventually I found my way. I found my passion. I found something that I was interested in, even though political science is no longer my passion. I would say education is, but certainly political science and education are much more related than chemical engineering and education. So Rahul, you have to be careful with that kind of stuff. Should we discuss the preference of university due to the environment? I don't know what you mean by the environment. Does that mean like the weather? Like, for example, I want to go to UCLA because it's sunny. I would be careful with that. But if you can reference something specific about the campus environment, then I think that's okay. But again, it has to be something specific, and it can't be just something you Googled. Is there any template to write a statement of purpose? Yeah, there's templates, but I would encourage you to write something that doesn't follow a template strictly, because again, this is supposed to be the area when you actually show the professors who you are. So I would be careful with that. Next one, I'm starting to do RA. I'll take about 5 more questions and then we'll go ahead and look at some examples here. I'm starting to do RA from December 1st, but grad school deadlines are December 15th. Yeah, Iqbal John, you can say you're starting it, but I certainly wouldn't say anything more than that. Let's see. Hey, Greg, what's the typical word limit? Mohammed, that depends on the directions that you are given. Okay, I think that's it. All right, I think I got all the questions. All right, let's go ahead and look at an example here. So what I did, I'm going to show you my screen here. 1 second. All right. So before we begin, let me give you a caveat. And the caveat is as follows. I am a GRE expert, not necessarily an admissions expert. I never used an admissions consultant. I don't really understand this this industry that much, to be honest. So I never used an admissions consultant. I always applied by myself and got into great schools. And then finally, number 3, I can only really tell you what I do in your case. So I can't really give super generalized advice because this is not really my area of expertise, but I can tell you what I would do in specific cases. So what we have here is a statement of purpose from Harvard. And this is from Harvard, the education department. Okay. So here we go. It says this: applications for the PhD in education must be submitted through the Harvard Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. For information about the PhD application, please visit blah, blah, blah. All right, now here we go. By far, the most important thing with a statement of purpose, and listen to me very carefully, is follow the directions. They tell you exactly what they want you to do. You need to follow those directions very closely. So for example, what does Harvard ask me to do? They say that I can write at most 1,500 words. Do not write 1,501. Do not flout this rule, to use a GRE word. It has to be typed and double spaced. Don't send in a handwritten note. Okay, don't send a postcard. Don't triple space. Don't single space. Don't 1.5 space. Double space. Your statement should be written by you alone. See, this is where we start running into this admission consultant problem, right? Here's a red flag for you international students, okay? You submit a perfect statement of purpose and your TOEFL writing score is 18. There is a red flag, right? You submit a perfect statement of purpose and your GRE writing score is 3.5. Interesting. How does that work? Right? So be careful with that. Again, Harvard's telling me to write it by myself. Okay? That's what they're telling me. Now, it doesn't say nobody has to, no, it doesn't say nobody can check it for grammar mistakes, right? But they're actually saying, hey, we want to hear your voice, right? And it says you represent your original work. International applicants are reminded that they must write their own statement in English. So, for example, you can't write it in Chinese or Korean and then use Google Translate. That would be a disaster, even if you tried to do that. Please note that the admissions committee will carefully consider both the content and the writing. Oh, interesting. Do you know what that means? Someone raised their hand. What is Harvard telling you to do here? They're telling you something very important. Someone raised their hand. What are they telling you? Super, super important. Come on. Here we go. Equal job. What are they telling you?
Hello.
Yep.
I understand that they're considering the content, like how much you have there, and
How
then
about the writing? How about the writing?
about writing. Just like you said, if you have 3.5 from Jerry writing, and then here you have the perfect, and they're gonna say, just like you said.
No, no, no.
So
What I'm saying is,
grammar,
yeah,
vocabulary.
if you have grammar mistakes,
Yeah,
Harvard is telling you right here they will punish you. That's what
yeah,
they're saying. They're actually saying right here, Harvard is saying, if you have grammar mistakes, that will negatively impact your statement of purpose. So when I say write it by yourself, what I mean is, yeah, write it by yourself, but that doesn't mean you don't have someone look at it and someone give you some advice about grammar and syntax and things like that. Okay, so that makes sense?
yep.
Okay. All right. Keep going. Now, here, this is what they actually tell me what to write about. This is like ticking boxes, right? To help us better understand your decision to become a system level leader, I don't even know what that is. Please discuss the following. So I have to discuss my background. What key experiences, plural, which means you're not just going to talk about one. Remember, I'm following the directions. Have contributed to your commitment to education. Am I actually committed to education? Because if I'm not, it sounds like Harvard is going to snuff this out in about 1 second. If I'm actually not committed to education and I start writing a bunch of BS, then in my opinion, the Harvard people are going to know it's just a bunch of BS, right? You actually have to demonstrate your commitment to education. So in my case here, what would I talk about? Well, I talk about the YouTube channel. I would talk about running free classes. I would talk about the number of hours that I'm working, things of this nature. I would talk about a lot of things like that. Okay. What do you view as your most significant professional accomplishment? Notice not your personal accomplishment. So you don't want to talk about, the time you climbed Everest or the time that you, put 35 cheese balls in your mouth or something like that. This has to be a professional accomplishment. Again, a most significant professional failure, right? Like what actually went wrong? Okay. And notice these are different things, right? These are different things here. And then finally, how did they inform your development? Inform means influence. That's a GRE word right there. Okay. Hold on. Let me take a quick break. My dog is barking. Let me go see what's going on. So if you were asking me how I would structure this, I would literally structure it by the questions that they're asking me. So for example, I might in the first two paragraphs talk about these key experiences. And again, I would really be focusing on this word commitment, like, with concrete evidence. Two, what do you view as your most significant professional accomplishment? Maybe that would be my third paragraph. Okay, what was your most significant professional failure? Maybe that would be my fourth paragraph. And in each one of these paragraphs, the third and fourth, I would talk about how they informed my development. But again, the statement of purpose is not over. What else are they asking me? They're asking me about your plans. What issues would you like to tackle in your career as a system level leader in education? So for me, because I'm actually interested in this stuff, I would talk about the following. Education has become such the norm that institutions are now allowed to charge exorbitant fees because people essentially have no choice. I mean, even if you want a normal job in this world, you have to have an education. You have to have a bachelor's degree pretty much, even to be a receptionist nowadays. And it's almost like the master's degree has become the new bachelor's degree. And if you actually look at data, people who only have a high school education in America, they're living like in, almost abject poverty in many cases. And people who have a bachelor's degree aren't doing that much better. So for me, I think this is a huge issue that I would love to tackle in my career as a system level leader in education. Another thing that I would like to tackle would be something like disparities in basically educational attainment. So what you'll notice like in America is that upper class tend to do a lot better in education. And does that mean because they're smarter, or does it mean they just have access to greater resources? I would probably argue the latter rather than the former. Another thing that I would like to tackle is increasing educational access to those in developing countries. So when you think about it, for example, the ETS GRE test is $205. If you're from, I think I actually looked this up, Bangladesh, for example, I think the average income, and I could be wrong, the average income is basically one GRE test, which is crazy when you think about it. So let's imagine that the average, test price is the average income of an American. Let's say the average income, that would be like a $3,000 test in America. Think about that. That's pretty insane. Okay, so obviously this is an issue that I would like to address. And not only that, you add in, test prep fees, and which is also basically, in my opinion, test prep industry takes advantage of people the same way that funeral homes and the wedding industry does. And what do I mean by that? I mean, people have no choice. If your father dies, you'll basically pay anything because you have no choice. It's like you're cornered. You're in the funeral home, and what do? You're not going to like start arguing that much because obviously your father just died and you want to give him some kind of send off, right? Same thing with the wedding industry, right? People get so blinded by their wedding that they don't even realize they're paying thousands for flowers, right? And so that's kind of what the test prep industry does in my mind. People get somewhat blinded by their dreams. Let's say I really want to be a dentist. Okay. I really want to be a dentist. And this dream, dentist, and this dream kind of allows me to spend $400,000 to become a dentist, which is just freaking insane, in my opinion. So notice all of this stuff. Do you see how it just kind of flows? That's because I'm actually interested in these issues and I'm not just writing a bunch of bullshit. Right. So that's what I'm really trying to kind of hammer home to you guys here. Right. It has to be something where you can actually, something you're really passionate about. All right. Next question. How do you envision yourself affecting significant change in the American pre-K-12 education sector? So again, if this was actually something I'm interested, which it's not, I'm not interested in pre-K that much, I would actually have to answer this. But let's imagine this question is more about education in general. I guess I envision doing this through e-learning. Nice concrete answer. So e-learning is quite powerful because it allows people from all over the world to get together and to do so cheaply. All right. Whew. I'll take a break. Any questions? You guys can raise your hands. Anyone want to talk? All right. Risky. Go ahead.
Hello, Greg. So the example that you showed to us, it's really nice because it provides specific questions, what we should put in our statement of purpose. But in the school I'm applying to, they don't specify anything. Only like in your statement of objectives, please be sure to discuss the research questions you would like to pursue in your graduate studies, and only that. So what
Then
should
I
I
would
do
talk
then?
about that.
What?
I would talk about that.
Oh, okay.
I would have one paragraph about research question number one paragraph about research question number two, one paragraph about research question number three, and then maybe have a final paragraph about why I'm motivated to answer these or something.
Oh, okay.
Remember, follow the directions. And
Okay.
that prompt, did they say research question or research questions?
Wait. Research questions.
Plural or singular?
Plural.
There you go. Paragraph one, paragraph two, paragraph three.
Oh, okay.
See
Thank
that?
you. Thank
See
you.
how you're just answering the
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep. Doctor, you have a question?
Hey, Greg, I have a question about the issue. You are saying, is this needed to describe those points you are mentioned, or something
Sorry?
like example?
Sorry,
In
say
the
again.
second plan, okay. In the prompt, I want to say about your plan. In a plan section, you describe something $3,000 test in America,
Right.
such that. Should we describe those things in elaborately?
Yeah, so I would. I mean, that's what they're asking me, right? I mean, that's what they're literally asking me, what issues I would like to talk about or to address. So I'm going to talk about those issues.
Okay.
You know, I might write something like this. The education industry is home to a range of issues, but not all affect students equally. In my opinion, blah blah blah. The most pressing issue. So in my opinion, the most pressing issue relates to cost. Education over the past several decades has become so necessary and so exorbitantly priced. Oops, that's spelled wrong. And so exorbitantly priced that students are finding themselves in extremely disadvantaged positions upon graduation. Something like this. Many
Okay,
will die without paying off their debt. Something like that. So yeah, I would get into the issues. Yeah.
okay,
Because
thank
I'm
you.
passionate about them.
Thank you.
Yep. Iqbal John, question?
Yeah, so you're saying that there is no specific structure and it varies depending on the school. But
I would say the structure is mostly dictated by the questions they're asking you. So remember Risky's question? Risky's question was, describe the research questions that you want to address. To me, that dictates the structure right there.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask you, like, each paragraph should follow some kind of structure, right? Like,
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's good writing, right?
Yeah, could
Yeah,
you have
you should have a topic sentence that kind of introduces what the paragraph is about, things of that nature. Yeah.
Could you go over through that structure a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, like, let's use Riskies, for example.
Okay.
So, let's imagine I'm talking about, so I would say the first research question that fascinates me is blah, 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 blah. Okay. Moreover, I'd like to tackle the question of blah, 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 blah. Finally, the question or the debate over blah, 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 blah. Yeah. See my 3 paragraphs here?
Yeah.
Okay. I think what you guys do, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, you guys try to get a little bit too cute in your writing. And in so doing, your writing loses clarity. Clarity is by far the most important attribute I look for in writing. Above all else, be clear. So, for example, if somebody asks you how old you are, how old are you? Just a stupid example. And then you start replying like, well, da, 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 blah, 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 blah. In my opinion, that's not good writing. If you just say, I'm 25, in my opinion, that's much better writing. So Risky's question was, what research questions interest you? Yeah. Make sense?
Yeah. Perfect.
All right. Any more questions? Risky, you got another question?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, no problem. All right. All right. Any more questions before we look at somebody's example statement of purpose? Doctor, hello?
Hey, Greg, I want to say that is this needed to use GRE word or
Certainly
is
not.
it?
No. Most of you will hurt yourselves by using GRE words. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Not help. Yeah. So be very, very careful with them. If you're really intent on using a GRE word, then you have to essentially have a native speaker check it. Preferably somebody who's in academia. In that case, you want to make sure that it's not being used incorrectly. And by the way, I see this a lot. So in GRE essays, I see GRE words being used incorrectly all the time. Yeah, all the time. All right,
Okay.
Rahul, you have a question?
Yes, Greg. Like, will universities value work experience?
Sure. But I mean, is the statement of purpose specifically asking about your work experience?
Okay. Like, if it doesn't ask, then should I not mention about it?
It depends on what they are asking you. If they're asking kind of general, like, hey, what's your purpose? I would mention it. But if they're asking you very specific questions that don't really ask you about it, maybe I would kind of weave it into an answer, but I wouldn't make it the central focus. Okay. Let me show you what I
okay.
mean. So do you see what key experience is right here?
Yes.
Well, maybe I talk about one of my jobs. See? So I'm talking about my work experience, but at the same time, I'm answering this question. See this word professional right here?
Yeah.
Doesn't that mean your job?
Yeah.
So in most cases, you're going to be talking about your job. So a lot of it depends on the question.
Okay. So here they're saying professional failures. Can I say some failures from my academics?
Only if you have no choice, because they're not really asking you that. So let's imagine you've never had a job. Okay. You really have no choice, right? You have to say your academics. But if you've had a job, and even a job for like 4 or 5 years, and you say your most significant failure is your academics, I can say from a personal point of view, you're not answering my question.
Okay. Okay.
Make sense?
Yes. Got it. Thanks.
Mohammed, question?
Hey Greg, so since I'm applying for a management program, most of the SOP prompts are like more sort of general. So do I have the flexibility to be a little bit generic in my SOP?
Yeah, but okay, just because the question's generic doesn't mean your answer has to be generic.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So for example,
Yeah.
if there's a very generic question, generic question, it's something like this, what motivates you, what motivates you to, advance in the education industry? Okay, and that's all they say. Write 500 words. Just because this question is generic doesn't mean my response has to be. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, let's go ahead and look at an example statement of purpose. And we're not going to look at it very long, but I am going to point out something to you. So somebody actually was kind enough to send this to us. And I want to show you guys something which I think is very important here. Okay. So this person, again, very nice. And this is not a bad statement of purpose. It's not bad at all. But I want to point something out to you, okay? This person is applying to Cornell University. Obviously a good school, okay? Go ahead and read the first paragraph. Let's see. Where is it? Hold on. Okay, does anyone see the problem here? Take about 1 or 2 minutes, okay? Okay, can anyone raise their hand? Tell us the problem here. Okay, Verde, what's the problem?
On the first line, I think they spelled Cornell wrong.
Yes, exactly. Can you imagine, and I'm not making fun of this person, but can you imagine you're applying to Cornell and you spell the name wrong? Think about it. And then how can you tell me you're interested in applying to this school and then spell the name wrong? Again, I'm not trying to make fun of this person. I think this person did a good job. But can you just imagine the impression that this gives if you spell Cornell wrong? And now what I did is I actually Googled it because I wanted to make sure. And I'm going to Google it again just so I'm not wrong. Cornell. Yeah, Cornell is spelled with 2 L's. So I want you to see how kind of false this would come across. You know, part of this question is, why are you interested in Cornell? I'm interested in Cornell because ... This is going to look like copy paste. Copy paste. Like this is basically just kind of copied from another statement of purpose right there. I actually was looking at someone's statement of purpose maybe 6 months ago or a year ago, and this person actually used one of these admissions consultants, but they didn't do a very good job. So it wasn't really her fault. And I remember reading it, and it said this: I'm interested in applying to the Department of Mechanical Engineering. And this was actually submitted to the university. It wasn't like a first draft or a second draft. It was actually submitted to the university. And then you can imagine this poor girl was not accepted to any of her dream schools. Because think about this. I mean, that's kind of a big deal, right? So what she really was trying to say is, I'm interested in applying to the Department of Mechanical Engineering, something like that. And the fact that this wasn't caught on a revision standpoint or from a revision phase is kind of a big red flag that they're not going to really particularly like that much. Okay, so class is over. I did want to go through this, but there was a lot of questions, which is okay. But I think we hit my 2 main points. Point number 1, follow the directions. So let's actually look at these directions. Please submit your statement of purpose. So number 1, you have to submit it. Don't write it and not submit. Number 2, this is a 1 or 2 page statement that includes, don't write 3 pages, your relevant academic and research accomplishments. So basically, the structure is already outlined for me. I'm going to talk about my school, right? Number 2, your reasons for undertaking graduate work. See the reasons with an S? So that might be my second or my third paragraph right there. Your academic interests. So what exactly am I going to do if I get into this field? Okay. And then finally, your professional goals. So that would be, in my career, what do I hope to achieve? Do I want to be a professor? Do I want to work at a Fortune 500 company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And then finally, include your full name and your proposed field of study at the top of each page. Imagine if you don't do that. Okay, it's a quite simple instruction, and you might argue, why do they even care about that? Well, that's their prerogative. They can ask you to do anything they want, you know, dance on one leg. Okay, I'll dance on one leg. So if you don't include your full name and your proposed field of study at the top of each page, it's almost like an instant red flag, and they're probably just going to throw it away, even if you're, you know, Albert Einstein reincarnate. Okay. The second thing I'm going to mention, just because we're running out of time, is your statement of purpose must be written by you, must be genuine, and must be polished. And of course, when we say polished, we mean free of grammar and word usage mistakes. I think that's enough for now. Number 1, follow the directions. Number 2, write your own statement of purpose. Number 3, be genuine. Okay, be genuine. No, who are you really? Who are you really? And then finally, number 4, make sure it's polished, which means somebody probably has to check it. Someone has to check it, but that person should not write it. You know, they might give a suggestion about a sentence or here, you know, oh, you maybe you can say this or say that, but certainly you don't want them writing full paragraphs or anything like that. Okay. All right, I'll take about 5 minutes of questions and then I will call it a night. Again, this is not really my area of expertise, so hopefully you found something useful here. All right, any questions? Iqbal John, what's up?
Can you, like, you have essays, issue or argument essay analysis, like assessment, right?
I
Like
do,
for,
yeah.
yeah. So can you do such kind of service for SOPs as well?
I mean, maybe, but it's not really my field of expertise. You know what I mean? So like I said, I can only give you advice about what I would do. I don't know if you guys find that valuable or not.
Well, at least for those guys who have grammar or vocabulary mistakes, so a little bit of flag would be like by you.
Yeah, I'll think about it. It doesn't particularly interest me that much, but I'll definitely think about it.
Yeah, because people really need that.
Mm-hmm. Risky question?
Oh, hi, Greg. I only have one question.
Equal John, you
So,
can have another question, but after Risky. No problem. Go ahead, Risky.
yeah. So the school I'm applying to doesn't specify the words limit. So should I ask this to the admission officer?
I would. Yeah, I would call. Like, hey, excuse me, my name is blah, 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 blah. I'm very interested in applying to your program. Could you quickly tell me the word limit on the statement of purpose, please? Yeah, I would definitely do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg.
Yep. Equal John question?
No, I don't have it.
Oh, I thought you had another one. Sorry.
No,
Okay.
I looked and it's still on. Okay.
All right. Abdullah, question?
Hey, Greg, I had a question about basically stating the fact that my interest would be like I have a mechanical engineering bachelor's, and I'm kind of like interested in design manufacturing and CFD, computational fluid dynamics and whatnot, like kind of like aerodynamics.
Yeah.
So is it safe to say that since where I'm from, it is not in advanced in that field, and we use F-16, which is an airfighter made in, it's an American airfighter plane. So is it safe to say that I want to excel in this field? And since my own country is not that advanced, so I think I would do pretty good in achieving my dreams there in US. So is this a valid point to make an SOP or something like that?
Yeah, I do think it's valid, but I would probably say I'm looking to help my country advance. I would make it a little bit more altruistic. I wouldn't make it so much, hey, because the field is relatively unadvanced in my own country, I see good career prospects.
Okay.
It sounds a little bit self-serving to me, so I probably wouldn't phrase it like that.
Self-serve. Okay. Thanks, man.
Yeah, does that make sense? I would say, hey, I want to help my country out here. You know, the industry is not very developed here. Not only do I see great career opportunities for myself here, but I also see an opportunity to really help out my country's people.
Okay. Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Any more questions? Zial, question?
Not regarding to today's class.
I can't hear you, Zial.
Yes, when you started a dedicated class, you said that you will start a dedicated class regarding reading comprehension or other materials.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Sorry, man.
Hello.
Can you send me a message on Discord?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, you can ask me on Discord. Okay. Viet. Hey, Viet. Are you there? Is your microphone not working? All right, well, Viet tries to work his microphone. Any more questions? Going once. Viet typed it. I'm finishing up my statement of purpose after Thanksgiving. Could I send it to you personally to look at? I mean, If I say yes to you, I'm probably going to get 100 statements of purpose in my email. Right now, I would say no. And that's not because I'm trying to be an asshole. It's just because I'm kind of focused on GregMap Plus stuff. But I will consider Iqbal John's suggestion that we have some kind of service where, you know, I look at statements of purpose. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any more questions? Going once? Going twice? All right, guys. Hopefully you found this useful. Like I said, not really my area of expertise. This is just how I would go about it. Number one, follow the directions. Number two, I would write it myself. Number three, I would be genuine. And you know what? Here's the thing. When you're genuine and a university tells you no, then you say, screw you. I don't want you anyway. I poured my heart out to you guys and you told me no, whatever. Go to a different university. Make sure it's polished. You know, don't have any of these grammar mistakes. Don't misspell the university, right? Don't say like, you know, I'm interested in attending Harvard, like that. That would be bad. All right, guys. Talk to you later. You can message me on Discord.